Welcome to the Intrinsic Report, where we leave you informed and inspired. In the last episode, we explored how the early Chinese civilizations emerged along river valleys, evolving from tribal meritocracies to rigid dynastic rule over the Middle Kingdom. The Shang Dynasty's rise was due to Yu's demonstration that human agency could triumph over the punitive natural forces often unleashed by heaven. However, their decline was marked by the Shia's loss of moral legitimacy in the years following Yu's death. The Shia's eventual collapse was attributed to the loss of the heavenly mandate. We now turn our attention to the next cycle of China's history, which, after thinking long and hard, I wanted to title The Age of the Warrior Priests. The Shang were one of the many tribes living in the lower regions of the Yellow River during the Xia. They rose to power after Tang the Victorious invoked heaven's mandate to justify rebellion against the Xia ruler. Upon victory at the Battle of Mingtiao, Tang established the Shang Dynasty. In earlier times, under the abdication system, the handing over of power was peaceful, guided by family honor and merit. Upon assuming power, the Shang did not annul the hereditary kingship instituted by the Xia. They did not see it as a bug that bred entitlement in ruling families, resentment among the masses, which often saw succession spiraling into violence. Instead, they attempted to make fixes to the system's inherent flaws through might and ritual. Hence the title, The Warrior Priests. The Shang Dynasty lasted over 500 years, led by 30 different emperors. The capital would move from Shang City to Anyang, the latter growing to become the ritual and political heart. Fresh off the Battle of Mingtiao, Tang the Victorious set out to distinguish himself and his rule. He did this by emphasizing moral leadership and effective administration, in contrast to the despotism of the deposed Xia. Tang abolished political persecution and oppression and advocated for governing with benevolence and compassion. During his reign, conflicts eased, people lived happily, and the country prospered. The Shang Dynasty flourished through the reign of the 9th emperor, following in Tang's footsteps. The Shang maintained authority through ancestral worship and divine practices, positioning the king as the spiritual intermediary. According to Shang religion, the supreme celestial deity was Shang Di. He was impersonal, distant, and only invoked in major matters. Right below the Shang Di were the ancestral spirits, especially those of the royal lineage. The ancestral spirits served as the go-between the living and the Shang Di. Reverence for ancestral spirits remains a core part of Far Eastern cultures today. Finally, the Shang ruler were regarded as the sacred kings, mediating between the people and the ancestral spirits through devotion and ritual. Shang rulers in turn were directly over the noble families and allied tribes. These served as courtiers, state officials, and army generals. In the lower rungs were the masses of peasants, artisans, merchants, and slaves, trapped in a religious hierarchy that shaped the rigid socio-political order of the Shang era. A central part of Shang ritual violence was offering human sacrifices to ancestral spirits, among other things. Kings performed these rituals daily as they sought guidance on war, weather, harvests, and childbirth. The Chinese were consumed by understanding the heavens, and the Shang commissioned diviners and ritual calendars, institutionalizing state astrology. They made records of their observations about planet Mars, various comets, and constellations. The Shang developed the earliest form of Chinese writing, which they inscribed on oracle bones used in consulting ancestral spirits. King Pan Gang moved the capital to Anyang in the year 1300 BC to create a new Shang political and ritual center, solidifying the dynastic ideology around centralized ancestral temples and bronze rites. The Shang popularized wheeled vehicles, often horse-drawn, in war chariots and royal carriages. Before this, the wheel was not used for transportation. It was primarily used for pottery making, known as the potter's wheel. A cowrie shell-driven economy emerged during this period. The use of cowries rose out of the need to standardize commerce across the larger tribal territories under the Shang. Shang cities were stoutly protected with walls made of beaten earth, sometimes measuring more than 50 feet at the base. Not only were they structurally durable, but impregnable too. Bronze casting under the Shang advanced to weaponry and ritual vessels, both of which were central to their military and religious power. Slave labor was mostly used to accomplish construction and bronze working. The primary source of slaves were defeated enemies. They and their children, born into slavery, formed a servile caste over generations. Other slaves were obtained from subordinate clans and states, often expected to provide laborers, especially artisans and concubines. When a Shang ruler died, he was interred with luxury items made of jade, gold, bronze, and other precious stones. Even slaves whom it was believed he would need in the next world would be buried alive to continue in their master's service. King Wuding led at the apex of the Shang civilization, and he built or expanded major ancestral temples, reinforcing the ideology that the king governed through ritual communication with the spiritual world. Not only was he a powerful ruler, his queen, Fu Hao, was a general and high priestess. She led her own campaigns against other tribes, and she directed sacrifices and divinations. Complete package, wouldn't you say? This warrior couple extended their influence by waging military crusades against peripheral tribes, aiming to subjugate enemies spiritually and economically. However, after their time, onwards of 1200 BC, the Shang Dynasty began to experience stagnation as later kings grew increasingly autocratic. Power was concentrated in hereditary aristocracy, leading to rivalries and succession instability. Social problems began to emerge owing to excessive demands for tribute and corvée labor, which had led to growing resentment among subject tribes and commoners. The Shang society had hardened into a ritual elite aristocracy above a laboring mass. The daily human sacrifices peaked, and the ritual burials expanded in scale and cruelty. During the final period, the country was in turmoil, and vassal states like the Zhou and the Jiang grew increasingly autonomous, amassing military power, signaling the mandate of heaven had departed from the Shang crown. Oblivious to the warning signs of the impending uprising, Zhou, the last Shang ruler, engaged in excessive indulgence, including lavish feasts and extravagant displays of power, while neglecting the welfare of his people. King Zhou became infamous for constructing a lake of wine and executing critics, echoing the final days of the Xie. King Zhou's tyrannical rule led to widespread discontent among his subjects and neighboring states. The Zhao, a vassal state under the Shang, eventually rebelled against him. The rebellion culminated in the Battle of Muye in 1046 BC, where the Zhao forces defeated King Zhou's, ending the last reign of the Shang Dynasty in China's history. Although the Shang Dynasty rose through moral leadership and innovation, thriving with astronomy, writing, and bronze work, the concentration of power through a rigid hereditary system and excessive ritual eventually led to the loss of the mandate of heaven. The Shang's collapse did not end the Chinese civilization. Rather, it marked the beginning of another cycle, one that would put to the test the unity of the Middle Kingdom among multiple competing philosophies. That's it for this episode. Do let me know in the comments if you are either informed or inspired. Subscribe to be notified when the next episode in this series is released. I've been your host, Martin K, for the Intrinsic Report, where we leave you informed and inspired. Have a good one.